Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the 21st episode of Comic Art Live. I've got a fun show for you this evening, and I'm not going to delay anything. You know what? I should tell you this. We're doing it on Monday night this evening because Comic Link has their auction tomorrow night, and I think all the guys are bidding. Everyone's bidding except for me. So we had to move it to this evening so they could have their free time. Next Thursday, I've actually got Vincent Sterzolo who will be on the show, and then next Tuesday on the regularly scheduled Comic Art Live chat, we've got, who do we got? We've got Michael Lovitz. So we've got a lot of good shows ahead of us, and it's going to be a lot of fun the next couple weeks leading up to the holiday. So with that in mind, let me bring in the Comic Art Live team: glamorous Glenn Brunswick, Wallop and Will Gabrielle, and marvelous Mike Berkey. We are the Hollywood Squares of comic art, aren't we, guys?
The four squares, yay!
The four squares. You say it like that.
I'm the secret square, though.
Well, that's the middle one. The secret.
And I'm the secret squirrel.
Yeah.
All right, I've heard it
I'm
all
Secret
now.
Agent X9.
So you guys have a good week off, I hope. You know,
Yeah.
I saw you all were making updates on your website, so that was really nice to see.
Yeah, everything's going well.
Lots of scanning going on. All right, well, I'm not going to, hey, since you guys don't have a lot to say to get things going here, we're going to bring in our guest for this evening, Micah Spivak. Hey, Micah, how you doing?
Micah.
Good. Micah.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, welcome to the show. I'm glad we got this worked out. We had a scheduling snafu earlier, like a month ago, but I'm glad we can make some time. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for working around my schedule.
No, well,
We understand that, like, ComicConnect is a slave labor organization, and they've got you working day and night. So
I can't say anything because Vince is going to be on the show in a couple days, so I'm gonna leave that up to everybody's imagination.
Vinny told me I had a discussion with Vinny. He said it was perfectly fine for you to give us the skinny on the dirt that goes on at ComicConnect.
I don't think that happened. I don't think that conversation happened.
Are you sure?
But you're admitting there is skinny and dirt.
I'm not admitting anything.
they have a spotless business. That's what I know. But hey, you know, one question I was going to ask you was I didn't know if you were kind of telecommuting or if you were actually going into the office. But you said while we were talking in the green room that you get, you know, some of the pieces you get to see every day while you're there. So you're definitely going in every, you know, a regular work week, right?
For the most part, yeah. We've been going back into the office mostly since the end of July. Not everybody. I got people who can work from home are working from home. There's certain, you know, it's a very hands-on kind of business, so it's a lot of it has to be done in the office. We ran the May auction was all run remotely, which is I didn't think that was going to be able to happen, but we did it. It, you know, worked out pretty well. Things took a little while to ship, but that's, you know, I think people were understanding. Hard to ship things when you can't get to them.
Yeah,
right.
Isn't that the case?
So even when you can, you know, stuff wasn't moving very quickly and still isn't.
But yeah, and then, you know, and we start shipping things regularly, and then the post office is taking 6 weeks to get a package to, you know, New Jersey. And you know, what are you going to do?
I'm sure it happens with you guys too. I've been getting massive delays with packages and checks. People are saying, I sent it 7 days ago. It still doesn't arrive. So post office, I know it's messed up.
It depends
It takes a while to walk over the George Washington Bridge, doesn't it? It's like,
it's true.
Yeah,
it depends on where they're routed to. There's different, you know, postal facilities have different kind of delays.
Absolutely.
I had 2 packages mailed from the same place to me a week apart, and the one that was mailed second showed up a week before the one that was mailed first, because the one that was mailed first sat in Pittsburgh for 10 days. So, you know, but that was a couple months ago. So hopefully,
I can honestly say, going out or coming in, our postal system, I mean, it gets to me under a day once it hits the state. It gets here quickly. So New Jersey's still efficient. I don't know about other places.
You know, it's not as bad as it was a couple months ago.
Yeah.
The election is over, so you know.
Everything should be
How long have you been working at ComicConnect now?
Just over a year. Last October. That's when I started.
And before that, you were with Scott Eder?
I was with Scott Eder for 12 years.
12 years. Wow.
Didn't realize it was that long.
All right, let's talk about dirt on Scott Eater since you're no longer.
Oh, that I can dish. I can tell you all the dirt on Scott.
He's quite the roller skater.
He is. He is. I actually talked to him yesterday, and I asked him if he was going through withdrawal of the roller skate because the roller rinks are all closed.
Oh, you can't just like skate down the street.
I'm sure he's been doing that. New York's a weird place to just randomly be roller skating.
But he travels. He came to my area.
Not now.
Mention it. Well, before, but
Oh yeah.
On his roller skate, Will?
I don't know if he got here on roller skates. He just knew some of the local places. I was like, how do you even know about these places? And
as far as I know, I only roller skated with him once, and it was awful. It was embarrassing. But most of the places he goes to are either out on Long Island or in New Jersey. So there's nothing really in New York City.
So how did you hook up with Scott? How did you meet him and start working with there?
I met Scott probably in the mid 90s, 94, 95, just as a buyer dealer kind of relationship.
Okay.
And I would see him at all the, I was mostly just going to shows in New York and I would go to Chicago in the 90s, but he was at all the shows I was at, and he had a lot of the art that I was drawn to. So we just became convention friendly. And when he opened up his gallery in Brooklyn, so that would have been 2007, he just randomly sent me an email asking if I would be interested in working for him there. And I was between jobs, so I said yes.
Okay, great.
Then 12 years later.
So you mentioned the art he had you were drawn to. So you were collecting underground art.
Well, in the 90s, Scott was more of like a Vertigo-y kind of British art kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was interested in at the time, or one of the things anyway that I was interested in at the time. And that night, as he progressed into the more undergroundy stuff, is when I was progressing into that being the stuff that I was more interested in. So it actually worked out, well, like as he progressed, my tastes progressed very similarly. So he was always a dealer I was drawn to for that stuff.
Makes sense.
So when did you start collecting original art then?
I started when I was in high school, when I was going to conventions in high school. This is like the late 80s or early 90s. I was doing a lot of autographs, and that led to sketches. You're 15 and you're waiting online for an autograph, and you see somebody in front of you getting a sketch, and you're like, oh, that's a good idea. I want to do that. So I started doing that. And then I didn't pay attention to the published pages at that point. I was going to shows with $200 or $100, something like that. I just assumed I couldn't afford it. And I remember this is probably 91 or 92. Oh, just some dealer. I don't remember who it was. It was some dealer who kept his art upright in bins, unbagged. It's like loose pages upright in bins. And there were pages from Grant Morrison's Animal Man. And I was just looking at them. I was like, these are cool. I don't think it was Mike. It might have been. Who knows?
I was wondering if it was me.
Yeah, you used to do that. So
it would have been at a Great Eastern convention in 91 or 92.
Mitch Hitkowitz used to have like bins like where I remember buying like a Captain America Ramita page from him, and it was just like in a pile that was like in bins, and it wasn't bagged or anything. It was just like loose like that. So it might have been Mitch.
Hugo Blanchet used to do that as well. So
yeah, so I just went flipping through the pages, and I was looking at the back, and it was like $20. I have $20, so I bought one, and I call that the best and worst purchase I ever made in my whole life, because it led to just
hard. It led to hard drugs.
It did. It's like anything else. It's like you get, you can only buy $20 or $40 pages for so long before you want better and bigger.
Right.
And then, and then the prices went up anyway. But I still have that page. It's one of it's one of those pages on there. I have almost nothing that I bought in the first 2 or 3 years that I bought comic art left, but I can't sell that because it was the first. And also it's a good comic. It's not a great page. It was $20, but It is at least from a good comic.
And who was the artist?
Chaz Traug.
Traug. Yes, I thought.
Yeah. I think I have it.
Yeah.
Bill, is this your cue? Did he send you a scan?
That wasn't one of the pieces.
It wasn't. It's actually not in my calf.
Oh, there you go.
Because it's not very good.
Well, it's the first, so that's
Well, that means you're either not so proud of it or you're super proud of it. So
It's Animal. Can you see it here? It's Animal Man wearing his underpants in bed with his wife, getting out of bed. His wife's dressed.
I did not know Animal Man was married.
Grant Morrison killed his family. It's like a big plot point. Actually,
sorry about that.
So, what you with Scott Dunbier had all the Bolin covers in the early '90s, and my favorite Brian Bolin cover ever, and it's only my favorite. This is nobody else's favorite cover. It's the cover to Animal Man number 19. It's actually the issue right after his family gets killed, and the cover of that issue is Animal Man. It's like a down shot of Animal Man curled up in the fetal position on the floor in the bathroom. And Dunbier had that cover for $500. This is like, it's like 92 or 93, something like that. And I didn't have the money, $500. So I was like, all right, maybe I'll try to save up the money and get it at the next show. And I go to the next show and I have the money and I go up to Scott and I ask him about it. And he says, oh, Jim Lee bought that. And I was like, oh. And then I found out much, much later that, and Dunbier told this story when he was on this show about going to play poker with Jim Lee, and Jim Lee saying he was going to spend $10,000. That's one of the pieces that he ended up buying at that poker game because Dunbier talked him into it. He didn't even want it. And that I don't have that cover because Jim Lee was forced to buy it by Scott Dunbier. Thanks.
Well, one day when he sells his fetal position collection, it'll be on the market.
Jim Lee sold it at least 20 years ago because I almost traded it. I was trying to set up a trade for it with Joe Melchior, who knew the person who had it. He didn't have it, but he knew the person who had it. And I had a Sandman page that Joe wanted. And we were trying to hook up that trade, but he couldn't get that Bolin cover out of the guy who had it. And then I sold the Sandman page. So what are you going to do?
So how did Scott make it up to you though after he did that?
He didn't.
He didn't.
He sent him pictures of Scott lying in the fetal position.
Yes.
To compensate.
Or a picture of it, on Jim's wall or something.
It's okay. I mean, it'd be cool to have that cover, but what are you going to do? We can't all live in regret.
This is true.
My favorite fetal position cover is Born Again.
Yeah.
Another
sore subject.
Well,
I had a Born Again page and I traded it.
Okay.
That's
I just really like the way when Murdoch, like Miller's writing, positioning Murdoch that way, so you understand where he is in terms of his dire situation in life, and I thought it was a really really interesting visual.
Well, part of why I traded the page that I had is because Mazzucchelli only sold the last 2 issues of Born Again. So the early issues, which are the ones that I prefer, he still has them. So the second to last issue he sold complete, and as far as I know, it's still complete. And the last issue was broken up. And the last issue for me is actually kind of the least interesting. I mean, the art's still great, but what I like about Born Again is that beaten down Matt Murdock, roaming around New York in his puffy coat.
Well, all that art was in that IDW edition. I think
I have that.
That's really cool.
Which is it's a little bittersweet because looking at having a book that reproduces a page that I no longer own, but that's okay.
Did you get something good for it?
We're gonna stick pictures of your exes in there as well.
We're gonna have you drinking by the end of this show. We keep talking art and regrets.
Well, you know, we could talk for an hour about all the things we didn't buy that we wish we had.
Sure.
Or
But,
stuff
you
we
know,
let go that we shouldn't have.
I have more things I didn't buy that I should have than things that I've let go. But there's plenty of that too. I wish I'd never sold it.
Sure.
Like all the, you know, I was saying that I sold most of the art that I bought in the first few years, and I sold most of it. It was early 2000s, and I thought I was doing great. I was making so much more money than I paid for them, but that's nothing compared to what they'd be now. You know, all these like, you know, mainstream pages from the late 80s and early 90s.
Well, as long as you took your proceeds and put it back into the hobby, or at least partially into the hobby,
Of course.
Yeah, you're doing.
I've only had to sell things a couple times because I just needed the money. So I'm thankful for that.
So what was the transition? How did you manage to go from working with Scotty to Connect? How did that happen?
So leaving Scott and going to work at ComicConnect?
Yeah.
Scott, I mean, mostly it came down to Scott. You know, the gallery business was sort of petering out. And it was just that the gallery wasn't doing as well as it had been. He was still making sales, but, you know, it wasn't necessarily in the gallery sales. And he was just looking to just downsize and cut expenses a little bit. It was nothing personal.
Right. No,
And,
I wasn't. I didn't think it
was. No,
be.
that's okay. Well, it's kind of, it leads into the. So, you know, I had a pretty good amount of notice that I was going to have to sort of start looking for something new.
I see.
And I knew I wanted to stay in comics in some capacity. And I didn't want to leave New York. So there aren't so many options. And I'd known Vincent, you know, casually for years. So it just the timing worked out that somebody was leaving right at the same time that I was going to need something new. So it just kind of, everything just kind of fell into place.
Timing is everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's different. It's a totally different kind of working experience. I mean, you know, it's an option.
Are you exclusively like doing comic art over there, or do you delve into comic books as well?
I do both. It depends on, you know, how much art related stuff there is to do. Because if that stuff needs to be done, then that's what I do. But I deal with the comics also. I like comic books. I can grade a comic book.
And are you more involved with ComicConnect, or are you doing shows, or you just?
Well, we haven't really done any shows since I started.
Yeah. But I mean, will you be when?
Yeah, that's the plan.
Okay.
And you know, and with the Metropolis has the gallery as well, and I'm involved in that. We haven't really had a chance to do anything with that either. We had a show planned for May that obviously didn't happen, which is going to end up being a virtual show in January with Sean Murphy.
Okay.
Oh, great.
So that'll be cool. We've had that art. I mean, we've had that art in the office now for almost, you know, for 9 months. And just, you know, we hadn't had the opportunity to do anything with it. So we were waiting it out to hopefully be able to do an in-person show. And you know, as that became less and less likely, we all kind of agreed to do a virtual show, and we're going to do like a video, like a live video chat with Sean, you know, as an opening.
Right.
That'll be cool.
What series is the art? Is it like the Batman stuff, or
it's mostly from it's almost all Batman. It's mostly from the second White Knight series. There's a few pieces from the first series, and some covers he did for like a Harley Quinn cover and a couple Batgirl covers. It's very cool. His art is great.
No, he's fantastic. I love his art.
Yeah, I'm a fan. I'm glad I bought some of his art 10 years ago.
Right.
Before he started drawing Batman.
Right. It seemed like it took an enormous jump the minute he started the Batman stuff. Yeah.
I find when I find a mainstream artist that appeals to me, I try to get something as quickly as possible before, because the mainstream artists can, when they take off, they take off.
Sure.
And so I try to get in as early as I can.
Well, it does seem like these days you can, I mean, if you want to get like the best storyline by that mainstream artist, that's expensive. But I mean, we're actually going to be doing a show in a few weeks about, masters of the craft that, where you can pick up affordable pieces, like,
Right.
I mean, if you want to get like a Sean Murphy page, for example, you might want to get like a Joe the Barbarian page, or like one of his early pages. Those are still like, relatively affordable, and and they're very cool as a piece of art.
I agree. My whole, the bulk of my collection is affordable pieces by artists whose work is not generally affordable, which I think is fine. I think it's a lesson,
That I think that's a great way to go. I mean, I think that, I mean, obviously the art is fantastic, and what you give up in terms of people in tights, may not be that important when you have like art that really moves you.
Well, part of, like, when I traded the Born Again page, part of what I got back for it was an earlier pre-Born Again Mazzucchelli Daredevil page. Mm-hmm. And the way I looked at it is, and it's inked by Mazzucchelli. That was my key. It's like I didn't want a page that wasn't inked by him.
Right.
But as the high end goes up, the low end comes up with it. Sure. So if something, if the Born Again starts going completely bananas, well, the page I have that I got in trade for it is going to come up also. Sure. So it's, and even like a page sold, was it in Heritage a couple weeks ago, that I don't think was anywhere near as good as the one that I have, sold for, like $2,000 or something like that. So works for me.
Right.
Is that something that you do? Do you sort of trim your collection when a piece gets to a certain price point or value?
I not really. I haven't. I think I'm not necessarily. I don't think about it that way. I'm not opportunistic in that regard. I don't necessarily sell things because, like, well, this is worth enough that I want to get rid of it. It was more with the Born Again piece specifically. It was a guy had sort of been offering me different varying trades for a year and a half, mm-hmm. and he finally came up with an offer that I thought was fair. Okay. Something that he was offering me something that I actually wanted, and.
So he wore you down.
Yeah, pretty much. But also, and
like, I want this guy to just go away.
And I don't know if it's the same with any of you, but when you decide in your head that you're willing to let something go, mm-hmm. then you're willing to let it go. It's no longer untouchable. And so once I decided that I could conceivably trade it, then it was just a matter of waiting for the right offer.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this is mental gymnastics. I mean, once you've thought about the way a piece could leave your collection, then a matter of the right offer, because you've mentally disassociated yourself with it. And, I think that's a tough adjustment to make. I think they have a tough time with that. And I think that's why. Sorry.
I mean, and there's, I think all collectors are different, but and I collect a lot of things, so which hurts all my collection. Like, all my collections are sort of not as good as they could be because everything is sort of spread out amongst, different.
So if I can just stop you for a second, when you say a lot of things, you mean within original art or different types?
Different types of things.
Okay.
So.
Yes.
I comic books. I collect records. I collect toys to a certain extent, not so much anymore. They take up a lot of room.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, figures. Yeah.
But I find that actually, I like collecting different things because that way you don't get burnt out on anything. I'll collect records for a few months, then I'll buy some art, I'll buy some comics. It's a nice, change of pace. Where was I going with this?
Well, we were talking about like collectors making the
Yeah.
mental
So,
adjustment.
you know, it's when you get rid of things, getting rid of things is difficult. And like 10 years ago, I went through every comic book I'd ever bought. Since I was 11 when I started actively, like actually collecting comics, like keeping them. And I was like, I don't need all these. They take up too much room. I'm never going to look at them again. But when it came to making the decision to actually let them out of my possession, it's a difficult thing to do. But once you start doing it and people start giving you money, it becomes so much easier. But with art, it was always, it was more, I want to buy more art, and I don't have enough money to buy the art that I want, but I have all this art that I don't really care about anymore. So I sold a bunch of stuff and, brought a pile of money to a convention and didn't find anything I wanted.
Did you eventually find?
I did. Okay. It was right. Where is it? The wrong way. This Harvey Kurtzman piece is the first thing I ever bought from Heritage. That money, part of the money that I raised the first batch of art I sold, paid for that. It was like 2003. That was the first time I even paid attention to online auctions at all. I mean, eBay, I guess, was around, but I don't know if I'd bought art on eBay at that point. But I was looking around on Heritage, and I was like, oh, that's cool. I'm not going to win it. I'm probably not going to put in enough money, and then I did. I wish I had bought more from Heritage in 2003.
Right.
It's funny because most people sell their artwork because they already have something in mind to buy. So that was rather odd that you're just like, I'm going to let it all go, and then I'm going to go to a show to try to buy something, and you find nothing. So that's not the normal way of unloading artwork that you want to move.
I mean, I've done that too. I've if something there are times when things have come along and I was like, I'd like that. Well, I got to sell some things to raise the money to pay for it. I've done that.
I mean, I totally get that. I mean, well, these days you go to a show and you don't expect to see that much, things that are going to excite you. But years ago when we used to go to San Diego, I mean, I would save up all year. I would sell things, and I would create like a war chest for myself so that when I got to San Diego, I knew like all the dealers were going to have like cool stuff, and it would be worth it. And it always worked out. Like I'd always find terrific things to buy back then, because you never knew what was going to walk in the room. But nowadays, I think it's a very different situation.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that idea though about saving money all year for San Diego, I think that's part of why sales picked up so much over the summer, because all the people who had been saving their money for conventions and then conventions that never happened started spending their money online.
Right.
And people still buy the same things. They're just not buying them in person.
Right.
And I think that's a lot of why the sales stayed strong throughout this whole.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like there were no vacations to spend money on. There were no restaurants to spend money on. There were I mean, all the things,
stimulus money and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So this is what we need to do. I mean, in order to buy more art, just stay out of the restaurants and don't go on vacation, and don't watch games out. And who needs new clothes?
I always thought that, like, when people would criticize like what I would spend on art or what I spend on comic books or anything, it's like, well, I don't, it's less than somebody spends on a pair of pants. I just, I live frugally. Otherwise, I just spend my money on things that make me happy.
Well, I'd spend more on clothes, but it's tough to get Wolverine pants and Spider-Man underoos.
Well, we all need Spider-Man under.
We do.
So you can find those, Glenn.
All right. Thank goodness.
I'm sure Mike's got his on right now.
No, I have regular jammies.
Mike, let's see them.
Jammies?
No.
Wait a minute.
Oh, wait. No.
I have peace sign jammies on. They're my favorite.
You are not a crook.
Wow.
Yeah. Not many people would get that one.
No, not many people do.
But I'm like Mike. I tell people, I've spent $400,000 for a piece of art. I've never spent over $50 for a pair of shoes. I know people that spend like $300, $400, $500 for shoes. I've never spent over $50 for a pair of shoes ever. Mm-hmm. I don't think I've ever spent over $100 for a jacket. So I don't know.
I've definitely done that. But yeah, that's I dressed the same way I dressed when I was when I was 15. The images on the T-shirts changed, but other than that, it's basically the same.
The secret sauce of how to afford artwork. You just Well,
I mean, I've gone out of my way to avoid having a job where I have to dress nice.
Yeah.
Well,
I went to school for computer programming, and honest to God, this is the truth. I go on interviews, and they would say, "Is this what you want to do the rest of your life?" I go, "No." I never got the job. I said, "I'm not wearing a suit and tie and sitting behind a table." I should have figured it out before I went to computer school, but I realized it afterwards, and I got out of it. So I was the same way. I didn't want to do that. So I said, working in a hospital, wear scrubs and stuff, so it was okay.
My father, who worked for IBM for 40 years or something like that, grew up in the 60s, was a big hippie, and had the hippie long hair and all that. He cut his hair when he went in for his job interview at IBM, and the guy that interviewed him had a ponytail, and my father hasn't cut his hair since.
Really?
Yeah.
Did he get the job?
He did. He did.
Good. Well, IBM
was a stringy gray ponytail.
Well, that's why I work from home. I don't have to worry about it. Yeah. Maureen is telling me I've got to cut it though soon. I told her this. I'm going to leave it. I'm going to let it grow until like April. I
said wait till winter ends.
Yeah, that's what I told her. Then I'll think about it.
We're going to send the IBM recruiting team over to your house.
Bill, I think you're happier and more jovial when your hair gets longer. So
I am. I'm much easier to get along with when I have longer hair. I'm a grouch, when I've got short hair. So yeah, we're much better off like this. So what, Michael? You did set aside some artwork that you wanted me to load up.
Sure.
So
you asked.
Yes, exactly. So they're not really in any order, but it's okay. I'll pull up the first one in the list for me, which was this Ditko piece.
Oh, my Ditko.
That's awesome.
I love that Ditko. I got that that walked into the comic shop that I just go to in 1995.
Wow.
Now, what size is that art, if you don't mind me asking? Usually those are drawn smaller, is it? Micah?
Hang on. Normal size, like 10 by 11 by 17.
No kidding. Oh wow. I assumed it was like 8 by 10 or something. That's nice size.
Nice.
And I mean, for late period Ditko, I think it's strong.
Yeah.
Compared to a lot of the other stuff he was doing around the same time.
Yeah, no, it's a great piece.
And it went unpublished until like 7 or 8 years ago.
Huh.
And then it was one of the Kickstarter books that he did.
Huh.
It was for he did a Mr. A series in the early, I guess 1990, I guess is when he drew this. And it was with Mort Todd, and who worked at Cracked for a long time. And for whatever reason, I'm sure Ditko probably didn't like some editorial decision they made. It just never got published. And then those stories all ended up getting done much later as his Robin Snyder Kickstarters. And what's his name? Jim Halperin has the back cover that goes with it. I could have also bought. He had both front and back cover. I should have bought both of them.
One of those regrets.
It's fine. I'm happy. I made the right choice. I think the front cover was $100 more.
I'll take the front cover any day.
I think the
back cover is it's 4 panels of like villains from the issue.
Oh, I know that. I used to own that piece. Yeah.
And then a tiny little Mr. A in the middle.
Yep, that was a cool piece to it because the villains were really like fun. You know, like,
But for me, I love, as much as I love Spider-Man, I love Mr. A as a concept, even though I disagree with everything about it. It's pure Ditko. It's Ditko unfiltered. And I always said if I could ever get a Mr. A, that'd be the greatest thing ever. And I just stumbled on it.
Wow.
It cost very low.
Huh?
In my local comic shop.
Wow, that's great.
So that was in what year you said?
95, probably.
So you let the humorist and say what it went for back then?
What would you have charged for it in 1995?
1995?
Yeah.
Well, since you said they were only $100 difference, I'm guessing you probably paid like $500 for it.
I paid less than $500 for it.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Wow, that's great.
What a steal.
I left it off of my Facebook 5 pieces under 500 because I put it in the first list I made. So I didn't want to duplicate it. I did have fun doing that though. Those
Yeah.
Little Facebook lists.
Well, I don't know. Let's see. Let me pull up another piece. So, but that's, the thing that's great is that, and then what, 15 years later after you bought it, or even more than that, that was published. So that's pretty ironic. I mean, a lot of people, they'll get a commission or they'll buy an unpublished piece, and then luckily in the next 12 months, 24 months, that piece ends up getting, published in some way. But for you, it was almost 20 years, I guess. You had
25 years. Oh no, I guess 15 and change. Yes, 15 years, 17 years, something like that. But it's cool. I wish they'd asked me for a better scan than what they had because it didn't print great. But fine. I wish they had asked for it. When IDW did that Ditko like gallery book, which actually has the back cover in it. I wish they had asked me for a scan. I wish they had asked to use it. That would have been fine. That would have been cool. But it's all good.
Scott's still not taking care of you after all these years.
Scott's done right by me. I've never provided anything to an artist edition, but whenever Scott Eater did, and so I did all the scanning for that stuff, and Scott hooked me up. I can't complain about Scott doing here. He's good people.
Oh no, not at all.
This Wolverton up here is in an artist edition.
Oh.
But it was in the artist edition before I got it. So I didn't provide it.
Yeah.
I provided a Doug Wildey piece for their Rio book that IDW did.
Oh.
So, I'm happy to scan my art for people who want it. That's basically the takeaway there.
Well, here's
the Peter Bag.
Yeah, bag piece. This is nice.
I think that, for me, I think that Hate is one of the most underappreciated comics of the last 30 years. I think in 50 years from now, if somebody wants to know what it was like to be, in your early 20s in the 90s, during the whole Nirvana era and the grunge era, there's no better document of it than Hate Comics.
Huh.
And I'm a big fan of his art.
Sure.
A lot of us are trying to forget the 90s, but okay.
Well, I was the right age in the 90s, I think. I was, 18 in 1990, or 17 in 1991. That was a good time to be, 17 to 20, the early 90s. A lot of fun. I moved to New York in 1991, and it was a good time to be young in New York City.
Right.
Wow.
Weren't you still in the city back then, Glenn?
I left in '89. Actually, I moved in '89. So
you missed all the fun.
What's that? Yeah,
you missed all the fun.
No, I had a lot of fun from like 19.
Glenn would he'd probably try and argue he took some of the fun with him, but
that's fair.
See, I was sticking shit together.
I left a little fun behind for Micah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
because I gotta do something for you.
I got accepted to the School of Visual Arts in New York in '87 and toured the school. But the 3 days I spent in New York City convinced me not to go there.
See, that's funny. So I moved to New York in 1991 to go to the School of Visual Arts, and I only applied to 2 schools because I wanted to draw comics. That was my That's what I wanted to do. And at the time, there were only 2 places that taught comics as, you know, as majors. And it was the School of Visual Arts and the Joe Kubert School. And I went to both of them to interview. And my takeaway from the Kubert School is that I don't want to live in the middle of nowhere in New Jersey. Although you could make the argument that had I gone to the Kubert School, it might be more likely that I'd be drawing comic books for a living, because they teach discipline, which the School of Visual Arts does not. But, you know, I lived in New York, and I'm fine. I'm fine with where I am now.
Sure. Now, I was intimidated, you know, coming from the Midwest. There was just no way on earth I was going to sleep at the Y for my first year of school, and you know, share a bathroom with 10 other people or more. So
see, my first dorm at SVA was the greatest dorm experience you could ever have. So they rented out apartments in an apartment building in Jersey City. So the building wasn't all dorm, so they couldn't police who was coming in and out, which was great. And it was a 3-bedroom apartment, like a full 3-bedroom apartment, 2 baths, you know, a nice apartment with 4 people in it, which for a college dorm situation, you couldn't ask for better than that.
No, not at all.
So my first 2 years in New York City was living living there with total freedom. It was nice.
Well, maybe I made the wrong decision.
What did you want to go to SVA for?
Same thing. I wanted to be an illustrator, but I ended up going to Montserrat College of Art, which is just north of Boston. A lot safer there, and but I ended up doing more fine art. So same kind of thing. Not very disciplined. They didn't like anybody that drew like Andrew Wyeth or those sorts of things, and just wanted you to be more. I don't know. They didn't want to train comic artists. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, the thing about SVA though that I always found odd is that because the teachers were all professionals, like working professionals, and what's their incentive to train their competition? It's
yeah, that's one way to look at it. So much for camaraderie.
They were there to sabotage your career. Is that what happened?
I don't know. Most of the students in the cartooning department when I was there were not good, so I don't think they had a lot to worry about.
I think. Well, I went to the High School of Music and Art for and my major was art, and the thing about the art classes that we took there, and yeah, like some instructors were better than others, but the bottom line was like, there were like a small percentage of people who were really, really good and were there for a reason. And you thought, wow, those guys are really gonna take off and really have art careers. And the rest, you're just like, everybody else is just sort of like noodling around and trying to figure it out. But like, the guys that really, really make it, I think, are the ones that just like have this talent that they, that's all they want to do. And that's all they, and it comes right from their head. Like, their ideas were just that much better than everybody else's, and their execution was that much better. Just at the end of the day, I think like you have to have a certain degree of talent you can't just like show up there. I'm not saying that you guys didn't. I'm just saying that like. No,
I guess. But I found out later that most of the people who went to SVA who went on to be successful making comics didn't go to the cartooning department at SVA. They went to the illustration department. So like John Paul Leon was at SVA a year or so ahead of me. James Jean was at SVA a few years behind me, but they were illustration majors, not cartooning majors. And it's illustration. The illustration department put more focus on drawing than the cartooning department did.
Well, and if you think about it, I mean, that's kind of like, comic books from, the 60s and 70s have become much more illustrative and much more detail oriented. Mm-hmm. And so it makes sense that like illustrators would make the segue, because if you're just taught cartooning and placement,
which is important though. It's important.
It is, but it feels like the bar for comic books, the bar has been raised, that the expectation is much different than it was in the 60s and the 70s in terms of what kind of art you turn in. So,
well, it's one of the things that's, part of, what appeals to me about more underground and independent art is that it doesn't necessarily have to be the most beautifully drawn thing in the world. It's not necessary. I mean, some of it is, some of it's
right.
great, but a lot of it is about the writing, and then the passion in the work. And like some of the artists who I think are just amazing, a lot of people would look at and be just like, well, that's just terrible drawing. And I was like, well, that's not the point.
Well, look, I mean, if you look at somebody like you were just pointing out Harvey Kurtzman, he's obviously not like, the greatest illustrator in the world, but his graphic impact.
I don't know. You look at the Harvey Kurtzman's EC stories and tell me he isn't one of the greatest artists to ever draw a comic.
I said illustrators. I didn't say artists.
Fair.
No, I think he is one of the greatest artists. I think his stuff is phenomenal, but it's not about pretty pictures. It's about the impact that you get when you look at his stuff. So,
what's interesting, Kurt, you could tell what EC stories Kurtzman wrote just from the way the stories are laid out.
That's true. Well, I mean, it's amazing the influence that he has on Wally Wood. You look at like the Wally Wood stuff that he wrote from EC, and you think like, oh my God, like they drew it together.
Right.
It doesn't really look so much like Wood anymore. But and the same with Jack Davis. Like when Jack Davis is work, it's somehow Kurtzman managed to convey editorially a very specific way of drawing that those.
I think he demanded it.
Yeah.
I think Kurtzman demanded an adherence to his layouts, or he wouldn't work with that artist. It's why I forget if it was Joe Kubert or Alex Toth who did like one Two-Fisted Tale story, and the experience was so terrible that they didn't even want to do another one.
Right.
Which I understand. Not everybody works well with everybody else.
Sure. Well, yeah, and he had a very specific vision.
Mm-hmm. I mean, to a fault. I mean, he was stubborn about everything, and it led to his demise as professional. Right. He quit MAD because he didn't want 49%. He wanted 51%, which is insane.
Well, this is why I don't go on Shark Tank.
Would you otherwise? Is that the only thing keeping you off Shark Tank?
Yeah, it's the 2%. Yeah.
Man, well, you gotta stick to what you believe in. Let's look at another. This is a very nice Crumb piece.
Oh, my Crumb! That's the most expensive thing I've ever bought in my whole life.
Oh wow, that's great.
Which it was part trade and part cash, but it was my third Crumb. Like it kept building up, like from a okay Crumb to a slightly better Crumb to now I think I have the Crumb that could be the last Crumb I ever have. It'd be fine.
Crumb de la Crumb.
Now is that from Big Ass Comics or what is
That's from Zap Comics number 9.
Oh, Zap. Okay, Zap.
But for somebody who collects the kind of art that I collect, a Crumb is important, and like having a good Crumb was important to me. And I'm lucky enough to have a girlfriend who also likes this stuff, and she was okay with that. She's thrilled. She actually she helped pick the page. She wanted some very specific things in a Crumb, and this has it. It's a blessing and a curse, by the way, to have a significant other who likes the same things as you, because you don't have somebody saying, "Hey, don't buy that."
Right.
So when you got that Crumb, did you sell the other
trade?
pieces?
The trade included the Crumb that I had before, and the other first Crumb I had sold. When I got
So does having a significant other that collects does it get competitive or?
More for her than for me. I'm fine with sharing.
Sharing
is more about.
Is she out there right now looking for a better Crumb?
I think she's good with it. I'm not saying that will be the last Crumb I ever have. I'm just saying if it is, that's okay. I'm at a point where it's like that's
a great one. It's a really great.
It's and that piece is nice. It's a good story. I like that it's got that like childhood crumb in it. That page is featured in the documentary, which is cool. But yeah.
All right, let's see. Well, let's pull up something a little different on this one. How about this?
Oh,
Giffen.
Sometimes the things you liked when you were 15 were pretty great.
You have that.
I love Kevin Mcguire and I love Ambush Bug. And so going back to the things that I sold when I first, I at one point I had 3 Kevin Mcguire Justice League pages because they cost nothing in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And I sold 2 of them because I was like, all right, one is enough. So I kept the best one. And then I ended up having to sell that one to raise money to pay for something that I desperately needed to buy. So I was left Kevin Mcguire-less. And I at the same time I had been looking to get a new Kevin Mcguire. I'd also been looking for Ambush Bug art because I love Ambush Bug. And this was in San Diego probably 5 years ago. I was talking to David Mandel about how I was looking for Ambush Bug art, and he told me he had some stuff that he might be willing to sell. So I bought this from David Mandel.
Oh. Okay, that's who I thought still had this, and yeah, I was going to say you and Mandel are probably the co-rulers of the Ambush Bug world.
Yeah, he sold me that and a Giffen Ambush Bug page at the same time. Yeah, and I found out from Giffen that the Giffen drew the Ambush Bug figure on that cover.
Oh, okay.
Kevin Mcguire apparently couldn't draw Ambush Bug right, so Giffen did it.
There's so much on that cover. I mean, it personally speaks to me more. But I love Mcguire's work, and then of course it's a throwback to the '60s Batman. And I mean,
I love the joke that that Batman and Robin do not appear in this comic.
Yeah,
I was reading that. That's funny.
Yeah. No, there's so much on there. It's fun. I mean,
and it's got Rex the Wonder Dog on it too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's just a weird like it just happens to be the issue that has the secret origin of Rex the Wonder Dog. Like who even wants to read that? I don't know who's buying Rex the Wonder Dog comics for Rex the Wonder Dog. I buy them for Detective Chimp.
Right. I wonder how many issues that even went back in the 50s and 60s or whatever, whenever it came out.
There's like 30 or 40 issues.
Are there that many?
The thing is, you got to look on the comics themselves. You got to look for paw prints to figure out who's buying them. So.
Well, Detective Chimp, when Carmine Infantino was asked what his favorite thing he ever did was, his answer was always Detective Chimp.
That's funny.
He's made a comeback though recently in Justice League Dark, Detective Chimp.
I have a Detective Chimp commission that I got from Art Adams that took me a long time to get because Art Adams, doesn't do a lot of commissions at a convention. So getting on his list is not the easiest thing in the world. And eventually I got that, and that just made me incredibly happy because who better to draw a monkey than Art Adams?
Right.
Very true.
Now that's a fine Mcguire example. And I've been known to collect a little bit of Mcguire, but that's a nice.
I had the page that I had to sell, the last page that I sold. I still miss it. It was from issue 4. It had Booster Gold in it. It was great.
I just traded an issue 4 page to get something I wanted just a bit more. So,
but then the piece that I traded that I sold a bunch of art to buy a Chris Ware like 10 years ago, and I get to look at my wall and see a Chris Ware, and that makes me not miss the Mcguire as much.
What's the Chris Ware from?
It's from it's not online because that was an agreement I made with the person I bought it from.
No, I just meant what story.
No, I know. I'm just explaining why it isn't in.
Okay.
I know. I was just looking in your calf gallery to pull it up, and it's not there.
It's from the. Hang on a second. I'll.
Uh-oh.
I don't know if you're breaking an agreement here,
Micah. Step offline here. Uh-oh.
We can show you the wall.
What have you asked, Glenn? What have you asked?
I don't know. Okay.
It's in this book. This book mostly collects one-pagers, but he did a new story that's printed in here that features the Superman character from Jimmy Corrigan.
Okay.
It's a page from that.
Very cool.
Micah, you just did our first official walk-off during the show. I like you.
Really?
You set a
I
precedent.
find nobody's ever gotten up to go get something.
No.
No, they
Not
usually
that I
run it
recall.
off.
Shocked.
I don't
No,
believe so.
If you have to pee, you have to use the bottle next to you.
I've
Or
got
the
my
coffee
bedpan.
cup. I mean, what might be hard for some people to make the bottle, but
I was only up for like 2 seconds.
no. But hey, you set a precedent. Now
Right.
this is on
Okay.
YouTube forever. So
So,
Oh,
people don't want to do it.
This book doesn't really have a title, so it's hard to describe it. It's easier just to show it. It's
No,
just
no,
called the
yeah.
Acme Novelty Library, which could be anything.
I was just curious. If it was like Jimmy Corrigan or what, but
It's the Superman character from Jimmy Corrigan, but Jimmy Corrigan isn't in it.
okay.
But it's still pretty fantastic.
All
Hey,
right.
we're wondering if
And
you
it's like, it's enormous.
Hey, we're wondering if you could share with us the images behind you on the wall, what they're up to.
Well,
The Kurtzman is lower right. You said we're
the
wondering.
Kurtzman is from the Jungle Book.
Okay.
This is the Charles Burns.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Over here, it's the Pogo Daily from 1953.
Nice. Okay, that wasn't what Kelly. I was wondering.
That is Dan Clowes. That should have been on the list of art I gave, right?
it was not actually.
Really? Did I read that? Well, reading it down was difficult.
Yeah.
You only pick so many things. That's the Wolverton.
Wolverton, right?
Um,
One of those two on the right.
so the one on the bottom here is a Canadian artist named Julie Dusay.
Uh-huh.
She did a comic called Dirty Plot in the 90s and then kind of left comics to focus on fine art.
Huh.
But she's great. She's one of my favorites. Above that is an S. Clay Wilson.
Oh, okay.
And that's a commission that I got from him in like 2005 that he published in Zap after he did it for me, which was really cool.
What about the painting? What about the painting directly above you?
The painting is I forget the artist's name. It's a Flemish artist, probably from the 50s. That painting hung in my girlfriend's grandparents' house.
Oh, okay. And is Doctor Strangelove a favorite movie?
I collect Kubrick posters,
Ah, okay.
so that's just the one that's there right now.
It's a good movie, though.
And
It is
far
a good
right,
one.
was that a bone statue?
Over here,
Yeah, it looked like a bone statue I saw.
that's an Ashley Wood toy.
Oh, okay. I thought it was bone.
It's actually an Ashley Wood painting on the other side of it that I don't know if you can see.
Oh. No, it looked
It's
like
in my cache.
it looked like there was
Ashley Wood.
a statue.
And there's the Clowes.
Ah, okay.
That's
I
really
bought
nice.
that a very long time ago. I think I bought that in like 2000, and I went to, it was one of the early like Mike Carbonaro shows,
Ah,
and I think I had $300 at that show, and I was what I really wanted was a Macro Boy Flash Gordon.
mm-hmm.
When they were all $300, when every Flash Gordon you ever saw was $300.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember that.
And there were a few at that show, but none of them were like wowed me. And then I saw that, and I was trying to decide between that or like a Bernie Kriegstein page from Piracy. And I think I made the right choice.
Mhm.
I think you did.
Very splashy.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think the Doucette piece is one that you gave me, but I had to crop it a little bit because it was a little risque.
Oh, it's got a little. It's not safe for work.
Right. Well, I cropped it so that
We're not at work.
We are on YouTube, however.
Yeah.
You can sort of tell what's going on in the bottom panel down there.
Yeah. Somebody's pretty happy. So
Is this a family show, Bill? I mean,
it is. Well, it is at the moment for sure.
Okay.
And I
got
like this piece a lot. At first, Mike, I was like, I'm not going to show this one. I'll just skip over it. And then I was like, I can make this one work because it stood out and in a way that I really liked from all the pieces that you sent. And I was like, I got to make this one work for the show. So
Her comics are great. I can't recommend them enough. She did a book called the New York Diary or My New York Diary, something like that. That's just fantastic. But she stopped making comics almost 20 years ago, probably, and just sort of, left the world of comics behind pretty much completely. And then she came to New York for an appearance at like a little indie comics festival like 5 years ago and was mobbed. And I think nobody was more surprised at the amount of people that still cared about her comic work than she was.
It does happen.
I bought that in the old days of eBay when somebody listed that on eBay with no picture. Which
That's where you got it.
Pogo was the same story. I got that Pogo daily on eBay. The guy didn't even list the date.
So you really took a chance.
Yeah.
Well, no, I sent the guy a message and asked for a picture and for the date, and he sent me like an old cell phone picture, the old flip phone cell phone picture of just the one panel and the date, and I was like, that's enough.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Dang.
There's no better eBay story than my Charlie Brown story, so I'm assuming you'll get that.
Well, we can go right to that, actually.
Yeah. Love it.
Very nice.
So because my girlfriend has endless patience, more patience to weed through page after page of nonsense than I do, she found that this is right after he died, like within a year from when he died, so almost 20 years ago now. She found that listed on eBay. It was called like Charlie Brown Original, and it was just a terrible photo of this little drawing in a terrible frame, and it was like $30. So I messaged the seller and I said, "Hey, are you sure this is real?" And he was like, "I don't really know. I think so." And I was like, "Well, if I buy it and I decide it's not real, can I send it back?" And he was like, "Yeah, of course." So I was like, "Well, that's worth a $30 risk."
Sure.
And so I think nobody else bid on it, and we got it and we opened it up, and it's got writing in the margins, and on the back of it is like three sides of a panel that I found out later was exactly the dimensions that Peanuts was drawn. And we sent it out to a bunch of different people. Well, not a bunch, like 2 or 3 different people just to get opinions. And everybody basically agreed that there was nothing about it that didn't look right.
Right. You can see the pencils on it plain as day too.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's got a little bit of a wobble in the line, which is almost impossible to fake.
Yeah. Looks legit to me.
No, it looks.
I wish I could find if it was ever printed, because that would help.
Right.
But it's it might have been a spot illo that was never used. It might have been in some random book that who knows.
What did you think the size was?
The size, I mean, have it in a frame. So the size of this drawing is probably like 4 by 4 inches, something like that.
Okay.
But the on the back of the board that it's on, which was cut, it's 3 sides of a panel, panel borders.
Right.
That are the exact size Peanuts was drawn.
Right. Yeah, I said a lot of like the Millbrook Brad images and things like that. Some of them they're like cut on the back of like what the strips the dailies would have been on. Yeah,
exactly. And all the early reprint books have little spot illos spread out throughout the books. So it could have been done for one of those. I don't know. Based on the drawing, I'm saying that's mid 60s. Just based on the way Charlie Brown looks.
Yeah, you can tell he's at school, probably getting ready to do a test or something. Being befuddled that he can't get an answer.
Yep. But yeah,
very, very cool.
Of all the things that I never thought I'd have, that was one.
No, that's a great eBay story.
But it's not underground, so you might want to get rid of that.
Yeah, sure.
Mike will give you more than $30 for it if you're worried about $30.
So obviously you didn't send it back, but did the seller say, "Wait a minute," and ask for it back? No, okay.
Nope. And the Pogo, the guy who was selling the Pogo, was just old. He was a guy in his 80s, and Yeah, he just said he was selling it because he wanted it to go to somebody who would enjoy it, and his kids didn't care. And it's actually a funny story. So it's dedicated to the guy who I bought it from. And I don't know how well versed you are in Pogo lore. Do you know the story about the Harvard Pogo riots?
No.
This was in like 1952.
Is that when Gwen Stacy died? Or?
Yes, it was exactly. The Green Goblin came to Harvard. So in 1952, they did the whole Pogo for President, thing.
Okay.
And so Walt Kelly was supposed to speak at Harvard in 1952, and he was late. And the riotous, unruly Harvard students weren't having it. So they caused some trouble, and like a dozen people were arrested.
No kidding.
And so this guy who I bought it from was one of the people that was arrested at the Pogo riot. He wasn't even participating in it. He just kind of walked by it and got swept up into it. And so Kelly sent original dailies to all the people who got arrested. And this is one of those.
Wow, that's a great story.
So that's back when Harvard really wanted to be like Berkeley.
Yes. Well, they didn't like Ike so much.
Huh.
Glenn,
I think,
I think I want to start some Kirby and Ditko and Bermuda and Byrne and Perez riots personally.
Sure.
And see if anything gets sent to me.
All right. Well, it's going to be. I mean, a lot of those people are not going to be.
Some of those guys.
They don't have anything good to give away anymore.
But I'm just saying.
True.
All right.
Things drop.
Kirby riots start tomorrow.
Yeah, but you got to spend some time in jail. Just remember that if you want to get anything out of it.
Be worth it. What are we getting like a Captain Victory page, or are we getting something good?
No, I think I think we're going to get prime Marvel twice up covers for spending a day in jail.
I would spend a day in jail for a Kirby cover. Yeah. I mean, even a mediocre.
Even a Destroyer Duck.
Yeah, I'd go to reform school for Devil Dinosaur.
Yeah,
my favorite Kirby is 70s Kirby. So get me started on Devil Dinosaur.
I love Devil Dinosaur.
You and Scott Eater, I know that he's really into this 70s Kirby stuff too.
He is
indeed. Yeah.
The amount of times that I should have bought Kirby art and didn't is too numerous to list.
There was like a period of time when I had a client that was really interested in that 2001 cover that Scott Eater had, and
yes.
And so I was like trying to negotiate with him, and we were talking about it, and he was just like, at the end of the day, he just wanted so much more than that piece was worth, and he's like, this is the stuff I love, and I can't, we did go down the road. We went back. He got
pretty good trade out of that cover from Bashara, and it still probably looks like a great deal on Bashara's end now.
Right.
That was 7-8 years ago, something like that.
I guess so. Yeah. No, I think I was about 10 years ago that I was trying to get it out of Scott.
Okay.
That cover was great though.
I think there's something a little more to that deal, but yeah, I remember now.
You talking about the Machine Man ones? Was that a Machine Man one or
no?
No,
no. It was
2001 number one.
2001, the number one cover.
Oh, number one. I didn't know. Okay, because the 8, 9, and 10 were the Machine Man ones.
Right. Sure. No Machine Man on this.
Or Mr. Machine that they called him back then. Yeah.
Let's see. I got a couple other pieces here we can take a look at.
Is that Bicholo?
That is the Elusive Shade the Changing Man t-shirt art.
Okay.
Wow. I bought that. It was one of the first things I bought from Scott when I started working for him. Because some of the first stuff I bought from Scott back in the early 90s was Pichalo Shade pages. I'm a big fan. And when I started working for him, I saw that he had that, and I was like, oh, I think I need that. So I got that, and then I was trying to find evidence that the shirt existed because I'd never seen it. And the only image I could find online of that t-shirt was somebody who had cut the image out of the shirt and sewn it onto a bag. So like, there was no evidence that this shirt even existed.
So you do not have the T-shirt.
Let me finish my story.
Oh.
So I had a saved search on eBay for that T-shirt for 8 years.
Uh-huh.
And I got one last week.
Wow.
Oh.
So
At a price that was low enough that I don't mind wearing it.
It might have just been like a 100 T-shirt print run or something.
There is no way that shirt sold well.
eBay only lets you have like 100 saved keywords. So I mean, you reserve that keyword for so long to get that shirt.
Mike, I think you got the T-shirt just so you could tell the story on the show.
It's just the timing was weird. I thought that was actually kind of funny.
It's a little weird.
I feel like you really need the bag now.
Yeah, well, I could make when I wear out the shirt, I'll cut it out and make it into a bag.
All right.
It is funny you say that, because I've come across pieces of art where finding the published version feels tougher. It's not, but it feels tougher than finding the art. That's strange. I
just think it's just one of those things that's just so weird. One that they even made a Change the Changing Man T-shirt, because I don't remember that being a particularly popular comic. And then two, just Pachalo only did 4 or 5 covers in that whole series, and then like that's the covers are painted, so like and Scott has half of them, so I knew I was never going to get one of those. So it's like that's as close as you get to like a cover image from Pachalo for Shade without having a cover. I dig it.
Or the shirt.
Yeah.
What size is the T-shirt you bought?
That's a large. The guy actually had 2. I should have bought both of them. He had a large and an extra large.
Yeah,
the extra large is still up on eBay.
One to wear, one for display.
Especially
I thought about that. I thought about that.
Half your collecting life, you looked for this T-shirt. I mean, you should.
I should have bought both of them. I know. It's all right. I'm happy to have it.
That way you wear it out, you don't have proof it was published.
And they might be the only 2 T-shirts left in existence.
One of the comments on that piece on CAF is somebody who actually has the shirt. So I know that they definitely exist elsewhere.
Huh.
So I actually wanted to ask you, given that ComicConnect has put up the Punisher 129 cover, when is that going to auction, and what's the story with that thing?
I'll let Vince tell that story on Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah, Punisher 129 is not a very important cover to my knowledge.
Nah.
No, it's
Punisher 129 is not, but ASM 129.
Not the Spider-Man 129 cover, but
I'm just messing with you.
We've got the 162 cover. That's pretty cool too.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Great cover.
Yeah, no, I think that since I've been following ComicConnect's auctions, that this is one of the more interesting ones. That's for sure.
I think this is their best one.
I think there's going to be a lot of interest.
I like to take all the credit for that.
You should.
We're happy to.
You'd like to. You'd like to take all the credit, or you can take all the credit.
I can't take all the credit.
Okay.
I think we should give you all the credit.
I can take some of the credit.
But you can take a good amount of the credit.
You're here with us.
Yeah.
You're already working out just a year in, and look what you did. You got one of the most looked upon ComicConnect auctions in a while.
That's my goal. That's what I want to do, is to make ComicConnect a place that people think about for art, as opposed to just for comics, which is
I just kicked the Daredevil 166. I kicked myself. I ran out of money in that Sotheby's auction. I bought this Spidey 40 cover. I wanted to buy the Daredevil 166 and just didn't. And it would cost a lot more now. Let's just say that.
How many years ago was that, Will?
1993, and I think it went. I don't remember the exact price, but between $800 and $1,200 back then.
Oof.
But I bought Spidey 40 and cover and Spidey 39 splash, and that was it. I had to eat, the rest of that week. So if I bought Daredevil, that I wasn't eating. Seriously.
One of the things I really like about
when you needed more ramen in the house.
One of the things I like about dealing with, the consigners giving art auctions is that sometimes you'll deal with people who have been out of collecting for a decade. You've had these like the Spider-Man 162 cover and the Cockrum X-Men 105 double spread. Like those were bought in the early 80s and just put away.
And
they were
Daredevil 40. I haven't seen that in years. I remember that been out there many years ago. I assumed it was from the same collection as the Miller Daredevil.
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
I think I'm not 100% sure.
So
but I like that like these things coming up that the people who are even selling them are shocked when they find out what the values are.
So the consigner bought these, you're saying, in the 80s, and they just like were in a closet or something, and then he decided like, it's time to sell them, and you guys had to educate him on what they were really worth. Is that how it happened?
Yeah, I mean it wasn't. I mean they knew that there was value. It wasn't about not knowing that there was value. It was more about just not realize. It was a situation where like they used to get made fun of by their family for collecting comic books and comic book stuff. It's like that'll never be worth anything, and they're not laughing at him anymore.
All right. Well, I'm glad I'm glad he finally got his status within the family.
Yes, but that's like I like that. I like helping people. Some things. It's rewarding.
I take things away when family members make fun of me and my art collecting. Take shit away.
You're out of the will.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, I get contacted all the time through CAP for people who purchased, just a couple pages from a show in the 90s and they don't know anything about it, but they've been holding on to it for 20 years. And what's it worth? What do I do with it? And I at least once a month I'll get an inquiry like that. And I usually say if you're looking to sell it, start a CAF gallery. I had an interesting email from somebody the other day, but they haven't followed up with me. What they actually had. It sounded like they had a lot, and they were looking for values. And I was like, well, there might be something in there I want. So I said, just send me the list. Send me some.
Well, that's the other thing, is that not everybody is going to buy something that is worth a small fortune. That's not always the case. It's often not the case, and that's sometimes you have to give people bad news too.
That's true. That's real true.
Very true.
Yeah, and I could tell you that most of the stories I get are more like that. People just got some.
They think they have gold when it's something.
Right, and you got to break it to them that it's not really worth a lot. No, I get much more of those. Mom's found something in there that the son left behind, and she doesn't know what it is, and I let her know it's absolutely worthless.
Well, what's interesting is that a lot of old-time collectors, what they focus on and they think is their money pot is not the piece that has the most value, and the thing that's sort of like they had their blinders on to is often what does have more value.
Yep.
Very true.
Well, it's interesting too, because I see, because we get a lot of comic books in. And you see these collections that had clearly been picked through 20 years ago. So like all the key books from 20 years ago have all been taken out. But there's a lot of key books now that were worth nothing 20 years ago, and they're all there. So it's like you end up with these collections where somebody's like, oh, the good stuff's all gone. And it's like, oh, but you have this. It was a $5 comic then. It's now, $2,000. That's always kind of funny too.
So what, Micah, we never really said, what is your exact role with ComicConnect there? I mean, is it, or do you wear many hats?
I wear many hats.
Yeah.
I a lot of it is, my main focus is on art and, trying to, get art for consignments, to get artists for the gallery, to get, whatever I got to do to get what I got to get. But, I deal with, I've been dealing with some of the other stuff in the auctions, some of the memorabilia in the auction. I deal with the comic books too. I deal with, whatever needs doing. It's all good. It helps that, I like most of these things. So I have like at least a moderate knowledge base in a lot of that stuff. Mm-hmm. So I can, talk to a guy about concert posters or a guy about, whatever, like there's a bunch of like underground stuff in this auction, like crumb stuff. like not art, but memorabilia. Like that's that's in my wheelhouse.
Very cool. Well, I guess we'll all be talking with Vincent on Thursday, but I'm sure you're going to be super busy leading up to that auction, and that's Monday evening. Next Monday,
yeah.
Next Monday.
Great. Well, once that is over, if you need anything PR'd for the gallery show that you're going to do online,
of course,
let me know what I can do for you.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. Thanks.
No, that sounds like a lot of fun.
I think we're looking at it's like towards the end of January is when that's going to happen. Well, I'll let you know about what about all the final details for that probably before the end of the month.
Great.
So let's take one quick question, Bill, before we sign off.
Yeah.
Encore asks a question for Micah. What represents the best value in the hobby at this time?
Oh.
You don't want to say
not an easy question.
Softball question.
Well, for Ankur, I'll say as long as it doesn't have Mary Jane on it, then you're safe.
Or Batgirl.
Or Batgirl, yeah.
Face it, Micah, you just hit the jackpot.
Yep. Exactly.
it.
I find that's a hard thing to say. It's the market has been odd. People have been saying that comic art has been in a bubble for 20 years, and it just that bubble keeps growing. Whether that's a real thing or not, I don't know. I think the best value to me is stuff that's been steadily increased over many years. So it's if you're going to invest in the Kirby or classic character, classic Marvel art, that stuff's pretty much safe. I think good art will retain its value. That's the way I look at it. It's and one of the things I've always said about like indie and underground art is that a lot of people have drawn Spider-Man over the years. A lot of people are going to continue to draw Spider-Man. In 50 years, when somebody wants Spider-Man art, what are they going to want? Are they going to want the thing that's more, relevant to the era that they read, or the thing that's, some Spider-Man art from the 80s? Ditko and Romita, that's the innovators. That stuff's always going to maintain. But with like an independent guy who creates his own book and nobody else will ever create that book, if that is something that's still being read 50 years from now, well, people are still going to want that. Does that make sense?
Oh, sure. Follow the logic.
And it's some of the more
good art will always increase in value, and if it doesn't, you didn't buy good art.
That's a good point. I always say that the you can judge your taste by how expensive the things you want are. Because if the things you want are all really, really cheap, well, how good are they?
Exactly.
Because nobody else wants them.
Exactly.
That's not necessarily a hard and fast rule, but
no,
not when you're buying $30 Schultz drawings.
Well, but its value is not relative to its cost.
That is quite true. That is quite true. But yeah, there really isn't I don't know, when you think about value and whatnot, I'm just thinking of Ankur's question. It's best value in the hobby. I don't know.
Whatever new book is by some artist that's going to be huge 2 years from now. Who knows what that is, though?
Right. Well, I like that at the beginning of the conversation when you talked about Murphy and the work, that buying their work early on when you think they're going to be big, you love their work, and you get something that's like Glenn said, they're not in tights, but it's still a fantastic piece of art.
I have 2 pages from Joe the Barbarian. I like that comic a lot.
Yeah.
Right. I think the question becomes like, do you? Maybe you get a new artist that's going to be hot in a few years, and you get lucky, like sort of like buying a lottery ticket, or maybe you buy an expensive Kirby page and it maintains its value, but the upside isn't as high as getting like the new guy that becomes famous in in a few years because
like all the people that bought Trad Moore pages 2 years ago.
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously, like right now, that's a great deal. But a few years ago, you would have been like, well, he's really innovative and cool, but I don't know, like you're taking a chance buying it. So.
Yep. But that's why I always tell people to buy things that they like. If you like it and you're comfortable with the price, then the price is right.
Right.
If you could look at it on your wall every day and not get tired of it, then it was a good purchase. And I'm sure we've all had pieces that we bought and we're thrilled to have, and then you look at it a lot and you get tired of looking at it. And I bought it was the most expensive thing I'd bought at the time. I bought a Kent Williams Havoc Wolverine splash page. And it had of Wolverine, and it was hanging on my wall for 5 years. And after a while, I just got tired of having Wolverine on my wall.
It's exhausting looking at Wolverine all the time.
Mine's lit up. So
yeah,
look at how tired Bill looks just because he put Wolverine on his wall.
Another piece. Another piece that I would have been better off not selling when I sold it and keeping for a while. But what are you gonna do? I did. Okay.
The Spider-Man that I have on the wall just gives me energy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not exhausting at all.
Yeah. The worst thing about that Havoc Wolverine page that I bought is that for the same price I turned down a Dark Knight page because I'm an idiot. It's like mid-90s.
Yeah.
It was the first. You bought what you like, so don't worry about it.
Well, I was for the first 5 years or so. I was actively looking for Miller, either Daredevil or Dark Knight, and that's when Daredevil pages were like $200. The Dark Knight page that I didn't buy was $500, and I didn't buy it because it didn't have Batman in it. Because because I'm an idiot.
You just didn't follow your own advice back then.
At the time, I liked to have a
We're older and wiser now.
Hey, well, but who knew?
Well, here we can throw one last question at you, so maybe we can help you with like an APB for your collection. Micah, are there any artists you don't have that you're still in the market for or trying to find?
Of course.
Yeah?
Of course. Right now, what I really, really want is a Frank Robbins Detective Comics page. I want one really bad, and they just don't come up for sale.
They're out there, though.
Yeah, they're there. I'll get one eventually. I'm patient. Patience is also something that I think pays off in any collecting.
I assume it's got to be
backup stories, or
by Robbins too.
He probably
Inked by Robbins, yeah.
Inked by Robbins, yeah. I said he did some backup stories, right? He didn't do many full stories, did he?
Not very many.
But I think he did some backup stories, though, right?
Yeah.
Was it mostly Batgirl and Robbins?
No, it was
Were they still Batman? I couldn't remember.
Batman, yeah. He wrote a lot of the backups that were I think a lot of those were drawn by like Jim Aparo or Nick Cardy or but yeah, just like something that I've just come across recently is that and that's like that art is just fantastic and way ahead of its time.
Yeah, no, he's fabulous.
Well, that's good to know. If I find a Robbins Batman, I'll send you a scan.
And it's funny because I don't really like his comic strip art. I mean, it's good, but it's not. It's like doesn't appeal to me the same way.
Yeah, Zerdy did.
Yeah.
A couple of things.
And I still like it, but it's something when I started actually looking at those Batman stories, I was like, well, this art is just amazing. It looks like it could have been drawn now. There's a lot. I don't have any EC art. I very much would like an EC page at some point. I don't have a good Kirby. The Kirby I have is fine, but it's small. There's a lot of like underground and independent guys who I don't have, or I'd like something nicer.
What kind of a Kirby page would you want?
What I really want is a Fourth World. I love that period. I love Mike Royer over Kirby.
Sure.
I mean, maybe my ideal Kirby might just be a pencil piece, just because I like that idea that it's just him, and
Right.
if you look at my collection, most of my collection is single artist, pencil or inker. And there's something about that, the individualness of one artist creating a piece that speaks to me. But given the choice, Mike Royer is my favorite Kirby inker. So if I was going to get an ink piece, yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I'd like an Infantino. There's a lot of, I mean, I think the ship has sailed for me on the Raboy, because those Flash Gordons have just gone completely insane.
What do they sell for these days?
Like a good one's going to be $1,500 to $2,000, and that's just more than I'd want to pay for a Flash Gordon.
Okay.
It doesn't. The content doesn't necessarily speak to me as much but the Captain Marvel Jr. art's just not out there.
Right.
And there's like a handful of pieces. If Bizarro, if the Silver Age Bizarro Superman art, I think I'd have to fight Dave Mendel off of them, but those pages don't exist. So those are some of my favorite comics ever. Those Silver Age Bizarro comics.
Oh yeah.
All right. So which comic collectors would you most like to fight for a piece of art?
Fight? Like, who do I think I could beat up?
No, I don't know. You just the idea of when you were fighting Dave Mendel there for a minute.
Well, that's just because I know he would want any Bizarro art that ever came up for sale.
Right. No, I know.
Which is not to disparage Dave. Dave's one of the nicest people.
No, not at all. And Bizarro art is cool. So.
He got me to donate to a political campaign yesterday so I could watch the little Veep reunion.
Oh yeah.
It was worth it. It was funny.
It was fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to fight anybody. How about that?
I was just, I was half joking.
I know. I could take Steve Fischler's got a pretty great collection. I think I could take him.
All right. If for like 20%, I'll help you.
And on that note,
yeah. We don't want Michael losing his job. Come on, guys.
All right. Now, listen, you can come work for me, and we'll sell all the Fischler's art. It'll be fine.
Sure.
Oh man. Well, I didn't see any other questions. Did you, Will? I know your eagle eyes on the comments. I didn't notice any other questions pop in.
I mean, we
did them all.
Yeah, we can't get to. I mean, there's plenty of other questions, but we're.
I mostly comments.
That
all right. Well, we can always pop in and answer.
You didn't get to the piece that I gave you that from maybe my favorite comic of all time.
Look at that. All right, we got it.
The artist who I've been told by him that I have the largest collection of his art outside of his own house.
Oh.
All right, we better look at that, Bill.
Because I think there were 3 pieces I didn't get to. So
That's what?
It's the weird one.
It's the weird one. Okay.
Which weird one?
Okay, well then I think I know which one. Well, if I'm wrong, it's my
Let's throw it up there. Well, let's see.
That's it.
Hey, I got it. So no, I was not familiar with this one at all.
Well, you all should go out and read Tales of the Bean World, because it is maybe the greatest comic of all time.
Tales of the Bean World.
If Eclipse put it out in the 80s, and it's at Dark Horse now since he restarted it like 10 years ago.
Huh. Nope.
It's fantastic. So he drew this comic at Eclipse for like 20 or so issues in the 80s, and then he stopped making comics really and went to work at Image as a in the business side of comics. He was at Image for a long time, and then he went and worked for Todd McFarlane at his toy company for years. And then when he left there, he started making comics again, and which is why you can find the only Bean World story he created from when he stopped in the early 90s, and then before when he started again in like 2009 or so, is in an anthology comic that's almost all Rob Liefeld. Like some Image anthology that he just did a new Bean World story in. So I can only imagine the people buying those comics for, whatever Rob Liefeld story was in there, getting a little weird Bean World story in the back of it. But I think it's great. He never sold any of his published pieces. Never. He does these little little drawings that he sells at conventions. Little, not for a whole lot of money.
Mhm.
And that piece that you just showed, I bought that on eBay, and that was a commission he had done in the late 80s. And he told me that that's as close to what the published art looks like that he's ever sold. So for me, I love it. He's got his fans. It's a dedicated fan base. It's a very involved comic about beans.
About beans.
About beans.
I'm gonna have to look it up.
Great.
Beans are good for your heart.
Oh, don't go there. Don't go.
One
there,
of the funniest. So because he worked for Todd McFarlane for a long time, he was part of the. He was called to testify in the lawsuit with over the Miracle Man rights. So he posted that transcript of his testimony online. This is years ago, but it's just funny reading his transcript and like having him talk about his Bean World comic in front of a judge. Just one of the weird things. But,
last place he would have thought he would have been talking about it.
Yeah, Larry Marder was one of the. He was involved with the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund pretty heavily. He was the president of the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund for a long time, up until relatively recently. He's been involved in comics and creators' rights and things like that for since the 80s. He was a mainstay in the Chicago comics, independent comic scene in the 80s.
Very cool.
And a good human being.
All right. Well, listen, Micah, we're going to call it an evening.
Thank you.
I appreciate you taking the time, man. This is
for
all the times that I sat across the aisle from you in
Yes.
New York, and we never really got the chance
All
to
of
talk.
us.
All of it.
All of us did. That's true, right?
Well,
Mike-
thanks for coming on, Mika. Great to have you here.
I would argue with Mike every once in a while about why the new Spider-Man movies are good, and he just doesn't get it.
Yeah. I said I like the earlier ones. He likes the later ones.
No.
Yeah, forever Toby.
Mike, I'm in your corner on that one.
Yeah, to me, it's all about the director, and that's why the earlier ones I think follow the comic book better. So
Well, I think you'll be able to choose. They're gonna have all three of them in the next one. So.
That just frightens me.
Are they really?
Yeah.
Oh, you just ruined it for him, Glenn.
I didn't know that.
Spider-Verse with Andrew Garfield and
Toby.
Tobey Mcguire.
Tobey Mcguire even look like now? He couldn't fit in that suit.
It doesn't have to look good, He
Yeah.
does
It's gonna be old, bitter Spider-Man.
Oh, that'll be interesting.
I don't know. Well, whatever. They can have my money.
Yeah. We'll all still watch it. That's
You
about
might be watching on HBO Max at this rate. So
That would be
No,
fine.
no,
It'd be
no,
Disney.
no,
Well,
probably
I don't know
Disney.
where the Spider-Man movies would end up.
Disney.
Technically Disney. They're not Disney movies, though.
Yeah.
Well, but they're a co-production, and Disney
Right.
releases.
Yeah, that's true. Either way, if I can watch Spider-Man at home, all the better.
All good. All good.
All right, gentlemen. Well, thanks
Thank
again,
you, guys.
everybody. I appreciate
Good
it.
night,
Everybody for
everybody.
tuning in tonight.
thanks for
Have a
coming
great
out.
evening.